But why is the president of China worried about this?
Yeah.
So because he's worried about American imperialism, because he's worried about the West changing how he's ruling China. So there is a palpable worry in the rest of the world that America has basically been the most powerful country since 1989. It is so powerful that it can do basically whatever it wants with its foreign policy. It can make mistakes. It can just mow down countries and whatever it feels like with no repercussion to itself because it's quite impenetrable. It has a massive military, and they have been going around, quote unquote, making peace all over the world. Um, so just whether we agree with it or not, I'm not anti-American and I'm not anti-democracy and I'm not. Um, I don't even know if I agree with the statement completely. I mean, I told you I'm an Orthodox Catholic. I would love to go around and make sure that people, believe things that I believe are true. But how do you go about doing that is the question. And what have they been going about doing? On the flip side, it is a fear. And um, is it legitimate? Is democracy really what they're trying to do? Are they really just? I mean, there's a lot of questions here, but I wanted to bring it up in that there is a push from the West towards the East happening, and the East are feeling it. They're feeling it in Russia, and they're feeling it in China. And how they feel it now is through NATO. So NATO, and this is how about we look at this New York Times, because this is a quote from New York Times. So this is not me anymore, because who am I? Okay, New York Times. Just as the United States resolved in the aftermath of World War II to counter the Soviet Union and its global ambitions, Mr. Obama is focused on isolating President Vladimir V. Putin's Russia by cutting off its economic and political ties to the outside world, limiting its expansionist ambitions in its own neighborhood, and effectively making it a pariah state.
Okay.
These are people that are not anti-Obama. This is New York Times. In effect, Mr. Obama is retrofitting for a new age the approach to Moscow that was first set out by the diplomat George F. Kennan in 1947 and that dominated American strategy through the fall of the Soviet Union. The administration's priority is to hold together an international consensus against Russia, including even China, its longtime supporter on the United Nations Security Council. This is a map right now that I have of NATO, and this shows. Let me make it a little bigger so you can see it. So the colors are based on the times that these countries came into NATO. There were the founding countries, and obviously there were America on the other side. Canada was also a founding country, but here in Europe, these are the founding countries. And then they slowly brought in these other countries that are in the lighter green. And then again, they're starting to bring in countries now that are sitting on the border of Russia. And at the time, Russia doesn't say anything, but now they're trying to bring Ukraine. And what happens is, do you remember that constitution that Ukraine had? So I mentioned something. NATO has something called an Article 5. And an Article 5 guarantee. They have articles, right? NATO articles. So the Article 5 guarantee is kind of like the same thing that the Ukraine Constitution had. It's a guarantee that if anything happens to a NATO country, that NATO comes to the rescue of that country. Now, the countries that are in NATO should be countries that, right? They're countries that have agreed that now they have the entire force of NATO behind them. Okay, that in itself should kind of bring to mind what the problem is. So what they're saying is they want Ukraine in NATO, and they will put the full force of NATO behind Ukraine. And they did this. So in 2008, they were sitting discussing this, and there was a Bucharest declaration, and that declaration, the Germans, Russia obviously, but even the Germans spoke up, and they were like, "This is a very bad idea. You you don't want to do this. You don't want to tell Russia that you're going to put the defense, like nuclear defense, against a country that is sitting on its border." And Russia was very much against it, and they were asking about Ukraine, and they were asking about Georgia. So then this is what the US ended up writing into the declaration. They added this section which says NATO welcomes Ukraine and Georgia's Euro-Atlantic aspirations for membership in NATO. We agree today that these countries will become members of NATO. This little statement, even though it wasn't anything but a declaration, it triggered the war in Georgia. The Georgians said, "Oh, NATO is willing to back our aspirations to be in NATO," and immediately they started attacking Russia.
I don't understand how anyone could take that to faith, because Russia has nukes. America has nukes. I don't understand how anyone could be like,
Because again,
yeah, if we do something, then America is going to come save us, but
right.
it doesn't make any sense.
But it does if you're protected by the Article 5. You are protected by an Article 5 guarantee that if you can trigger a war where it looks like Russia is the aggressor, then you win.
But no one can really fight a war against Russia unless they want to risk nukes.
Well,
That's what I'm saying. On a practical level, it doesn't really work.
well, okay. Here's the thing: is that the ultimate motivation of some of these people might be different than what we think. Jordan Peterson did a really good talk about Hitler, and so if anybody's seen this, please, you know where I'm getting this from. Basically, his argument was that Hitler actually was an evil person, and what his final result was the death of the maximum amount of people. And the reason he can say that, and the reason that's supported, is because when Germany started losing the war, they ramped up the killings of the Jews instead of saying, hey, maybe we should redirect these resources to actually the battlefront so we can win the war. But no, they didn't redirect any of their soldiers. They actually ramped up the mass murder. So sometimes it's possible that maybe the elites and the globalists and the people that we're worried about don't have the conventional things we think of in mind, like conquering land or, expanding democracy. Like I said, I think Misheimer's view of the situation may be a little bit naive. I think that they might be trying to kill us and exterminate us. And based on what we've been seeing with the vaccines and all the other things and biolabs and humanized mice, and I mean, it's kind of reaching the levels where normal people are noticing that there's something sinister going on. If you go back, okay, so a lot of people talk about WEF, and they talk about all these other, I know we're getting kind of down a rabbit hole, and I'm trying to keep it on history and facts and less out of the conspiracy region of this, but behind WEF, in a long time ago, but these organizations are still here, there is something called the Club of Rome. And these major players of all, and still probably do, because right now the Club of Rome, like every other website or web page that you go to find members lists, there's like a show member list, and then there are the real members. Like when Bella Dodd was talking, to the U.S. Congress, and she's saying, she knows as a non-card carrying communist, because you need plausible deniability, right? So the members of these organizations are never really the members on the member list. The members on the member list are the vanity members. But these people, we're dealing with people. The Club of Rome was all about overpopulation and, eliminating humans on the planet. And this group of people have broken off into these subsections of how do we do this. We have the World Economic Forum. We have a lot of people in the green movement in different areas. Like Mikhail Gorbachev was running green.
These are super Malthusians of that ilk, technocrats, Malthusians.
I guess what I'm saying is that there may be another objective that is more sinister than just bringing democracy to every nation that NATO can. And triggering wars and having people die might not be a bad thing for people who want to be in control, because that word sustainability, if something is going to be sustained, you have to think about who is sustaining it. And so whenever they're talking about sustainability, they're also talking about a limited population, because they're the sustainers.
Right.
In my worldview, God is the sustainer, and he sustains everything, and I don't worry about sustainability. In a worldview where you worry about sustainability, you have sustainers. And those sustainers run out of funds when they have too many people to sustain. So,
and too many people can become messy.
Yes.
Yeah, much easier to have small, controlled populations.
Yeah, and you want the right type of people. You want to get rid of all of the people that are not controllable.
Yes.
People like truckers.
Those damn truckers are so icky. So much body hair. Yes, eugenics, Northern Star, exactly. That's the word I was trying to come up with. So the Malthusians, eugenicists, everyone, history's been taught as if that was like a fashion trend that kind of went away through the World War II. It didn't at all. The people that went on to do Club of Rome and such are massive acolytes of the eugenicists and living members of open eugenicists before the war. Now they're just closeted eugenicists. Malthusians, including Trudeau's father, massive Malthusians. Still showing that when the Constitution of Canada, the Charter of Rights, was being written, they're circulating charts in the 80s, trying to convince everyone that as production will fall off as population grows, and we need to have smaller populations. It's horrible, horrible stuff. When a cursory glance at the globe will show you that there's plenty of room for everybody. I saw an really cool info show on YouTube once where they said the entire population of the planet Earth would fit into a little pile inside the Grand Canyon, just like about 2 miles wide. Mm-hmm. Every human being on Earth. So, the very notion is ridiculous.
Between Texas and the Southwest, you could actually have everyone side by side with an 1,100 square foot house.
Yeah, right.
So you could have, a little house with a backyard, like a little bit, and just if we stuck them all side by side. This is why, as a child, I was like, what on earth are we worried about, like the environment? I couldn't get it, because, and at the time the world could pretty much fit in Texas. It didn't even need like the other states to the side. Like it was just Texas. And I was like, we're worried about like spraying aerosols into the air, and I'm imagining everyone in Texas holding up an aerosol can and spraying it as hard as they can.
and the Earth just shrugs us off. Yeah.
Right.
The left loves to use George Carlin quotes and routines to kind of, put down Trump or whatever right-wing stuff, but they don't actually watch his routines where he goes and says, like, you idiots think that, like, what we're doing here on the planet has anything to do, like, the Earth even notices us. The hubris, the sheer hubris to think that we're
Absolutely.
driving the changes on Earth. It's just sheer
Well, I mean, it reminds me
narcissism.
of watching G.I. Joe as a kid and, Cobra Commander trying to, like, change the weather and building all these machines to, like, change weather all over the planet. And I mean, are really, like, this is supposed to be politics. This is a cartoon show.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Okay, so
I actually have, I think, yeah, this was a post by, Ken Woodall. It's about Pierre Trudeau, because you mentioned him. He mentions here seeing a train stop for a student protest. The guy that was leading that protest had a swastika on his jacket, and his name was Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
Mm. I just came across this recently too. There are the pictures of him in Montreal going into Nazi rallies. I was like, what?
Yeah, and he was very famously always spotted. He would ride this motorcycle, and he would have this. So he was just up and down the streets of Montreal with the swastika on his arm on his motorbike. And
Wow.
these are who these people are, and I would love to come on and do another history program on Canadian history if you
Oh
want.
yeah, you've got to. The Electric Boogaloo is going to happen,
Because I
and the
actually
return
have
of the
saved-
Zeruda.
I have saved the Canadian, like I have an old Canadian history book. I have a couple of old, books from that were published in Canada that had the actual history in it, and they mentioned the Trudeaus, they mentioned the Bourassaus, they mentioned Etienne. Like it's in the same family, the exact same families that were causing trouble in World War I are still causing trouble today, and their parents were lawyers, and it's the same lawyer class. It's the exact same French Revolution stuff. I always say about that Charter of Rights is Napoleonic law, and our country was repatriated in the 80s. We lost our flag. It changed color. It went red, and we had a new constitution, and we basically lost the war to the communists in Canada without firing a shot.
Well, this is where people like Matthew Ehret come in to play. EHRET. Everyone find him and consume anything you can of this guy. I think he's going to be like Canada's Noam Chomsky. Just give him like 50 years for his nose to grow and his hair to go thin. He outlines how Canadian nationalism was a product that was created by the City of London. That they created Canadian nationalism and sent over a guy that was fully in charge of creating Canadian nationalism and gave us our meaningless flag with a fucking leaf on it that means nothing.
I remember Sheila Copps. I remember that, it was everywhere where you had to, I'm going to close this. Maybe I can find it because I just tried to find the Canadian flag, because I remember Sheila Copps made sure that every Canadian got a Canadian flag. They wanted it. It was very important to them that you could fly the Canadian flag, because it was like nobody was doing it, and so every household was entitled to receive a Canadian flag. So I did.
I remember that.
You remember?
I remember reading about it anyway.
I mean, my father got one. I remember we had a giant Canadian flag at home, and I asked him, where'd that come from? Well, the government's giving them out, So here, yeah. So I'm going to share this. This is what happens if you go to the government website right now to get a Canadian flag.
We can still get free Canadian flags?
That's what it says. So you tell me.
I thought they were symbols of right-wing ideology now.
So what does it? Can you see that?
Oh, sorry. I always have to activate the stream.
So there's two types: the Peace Tower flag or other Parliament Hill flags. They're in various two different sizes.
The waiting period. The waiting period for both Peace Tower and other Parliament Hill flags exceeds 100 years. Oh, I hope shipping's free.